You didn't come here by accident. Perhaps something stirred when you heard the word empath, a word often whispered, rarely understood. Maybe you're simply curious, or maybe, just maybe, you've felt a deep ache your whole life, one that never quite had a name. If so, let me tell you, this is not a talk about sentimentality or spiritual fluff. This is a descent, because to call yourself an empath in today's culture is often to be misunderstood, labeled fragile, overly emotional, too much. But what if I told you, it's not too much? A descent into the raw, ancient truth that lives beneath what the modern world calls sensitivity. In the same way, there's no correlation between being the loudest energy in the room and being the wisest. The empath often says little, but feels everything. Not just moods, but memories, energies, lineage, the very tension in someone's soul. What if I told you it's deep, and that wiring, though exhausting, may hold sacred potential? You are not broken. You are not weak. You are wired differently. As Susan Cain writes in Quiet, there's zero correlation between being the best talker and having the best ideas. We don't just cling, we absorb. You are the one who can walk into a room and sense a storm no one has spoken. The one who carries other people's sorrow like a ghost folded into your chest. The one who cannot rest when someone near you is quietly breaking. But this gift comes at a price. Michael Singer writes in The Untethered Soul that most people walk through life clinging to the pain, clinging to the past, clinging to the mind. Empaths, we take in the unspoken pain of others and mistake it for our own. We carry what was never ours to carry, and then wonder why we retired all the time. This isn't just emotional exhaustion. It's psychic overload. It's spiritual entanglement. And if no one ever taught you to separate what's yours from what isn't, if no one ever told you that empathy without boundaries is possession, then you are not alone. But you must know this. Empathy is not meant to drown you. It is meant to awaken you. So if your heart is heavy, if your soul feels porous, if your body is tired and you can't explain why, stay with me. This is not the end of your sensitivity. It is the beginning of your initiation. Let's get something straight. When I say empath, I'm not speaking about some flower-wrapped identity floating on yoga mats and inspirational memes. I'm not speaking about someone who cries icily and posts quotes about light and love. I'm speaking about someone who walks through fire, but does so silently. Someone who absorbs what others deny. Someone who is possessed, not by evil, but by unseen energies they cannot name. The culture has made empathy cute. But empathy, real empathy, is not cute. It is violent in its own quiet way. It is the storm that hurls itself against your nervous system without warning. It is the weight of carrying not just another's sadness, but their unprocessed shadow, the parts of them they've refused to face. Robert Greene wrote, "What we can't see, or what is concealed, has the greatest power over us." And this is what makes empathy dangerous, because most people walk around completely unaware of what they carry. But they walk around feeling what others carry, and often mistake it as their own. This is not a gentle act. It's a psychic invasion, a slow, soul-level erosion. And unless the empath becomes conscious, they are not helping others. They are being used by archetypes older than civilization. You see, the true empath isn't a harmless observer. They are a vessel, a mirror, a magnet. They attract pain like lightning rods attract storms, and they do so unconsciously, until they learn to name what's entering them. When the world praises you for feeling deeply, you may never realize the difference between a gift and a trap. Empathy that is praised too soon becomes romanticized, and anything romanticized gets stripped of its teeth. It becomes a costume, a caricature, a hollow virtue signaling its own virtue. The true empath archetype, as I've encountered it in dreams, in therapy, in myth, is not a saint. It is a soul wound that became aware of itself. It is a sacred function that must be trained like fire, or it burns the host alive. So ask yourself now, do you really want to feel everything? Or do you want to see clearly? Because clarity is the beginning of power, and true empathy begins when sentimentality dies. Many empaths don't awaken through meditation or mysticism. They awaken through burnout, through breakdown, through the unshakable feeling that they're carrying something that doesn't belong to them. And they are, not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally they are absorbing and fusing with the emotional states of others, unaware that their body, their mind, their nervous system has become a dumping ground for unresolved pain. This is not a personality trait. It's a trauma imprint. Dr. Gaborin, When the Body Says No, explains, emotional stress. When hidden and unprocessed, it becomes a physiological burden. Many empaths learned their gift in childhood, not as a blessing, but as a survival strategy. They were the ones who read the room because no one else could. They monitored moods like lifeguards, watching for signs of danger in a parent's voice, a teacher's silence, or a sibling's rage. Why? Because their safety depended on it. Pete Walker, who coined the term emotional flashback, calls this the fawn response, where others fight, flee, or freeze. They appease, they merge, they become what others need before being asked, hoping, unconsciously, that this will earn them safety. maybe even love. But here's the catch. When you learn to survive by becoming what others need, you forget who you are. And that, right there, is the root of emotional fusion. Fusion is not empathy. It is boundary collapse. It is the dissolving of your center in the presence of another's suffering. It is hearing someone's pain and losing your own voice. It is absorbing a friend's rage and becoming irritable for no reason. It is crying when you walk into a room and not knowing why. And while it may feel kind, it is, at its core, a form of self-abandonment. Because empathy without differentiation is not compassion. It is possession. By their lineage of unlived grief. Possession by what? By another's shadow. By their shame. You cannot heal the world by becoming it. If you don't know where you end and someone else begins, you will bleed energy until your body collapses. And one day, your body will say no. Not because you're rebroken, but because you've carried too much that was never yours. This is the moment the empath must wake up. To feel is sacred, but to fuse is unsustainable. You were never meant to dissolve into others. You were meant to stand whole in your own energy. And from that place, offer something no sponge ever could. Presence with clarity, compassion with boundaries, love without losing yourself. Most people think empathy is the highest form of love, but few understand that empathy can also be a mask, a shield we wear, a role we play, a strategy we unknowingly use to avoid the deeper pain within ourselves. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Some empaths use compassion to hide their fear of rejection, to hide their craving to feel important, to hide the aching belief that they must earn love by carrying someone else's pain. You see, we rarely ask, what drives my empathy? Is it connection or is it control? Because sometimes helping others isn't about love. It's about managing anxiety. It's about needing to be needed. It is about escaping the unbearable silence of our own wounds by immersing ourselves in someone else. Brown writes in Daring Greatly, when we feel inadequate and ashamed, we often use connection as a substitute for worthiness. Let that sink in. Some of us, especially empaths, confuse being needed with being loved. We become experts at understanding everyone else's emotions, but remain strangers to our own. We carry, soothe, heal, but deep down we're hoping anyone, will notice that we are tired. This is the empath's shadow. Not weakness, but over-identification. Not too much love, but love with conditions. And the biggest condition of all, if I carry your pain, will you finally stay? If I fix you, will I finally be enough? If I disappear for you, will you love me in return? But here's the paradox. The more you merge with others, the more invisible you become. And the more invisible you are, the more you crave validation through compassion. It's a trap, and it's time to call it what it is. A survival pattern wearing the costume of virtue. True empathy doesn't come from self. It comes from self. And you cannot love someone fully if you are secretly hoping that loving them will save you. So ask yourself, where does my empathy come from? Truth or fear? Who am I when no one needs me? What part of me is afraid to just be, without rescuing anyone? Because until you face the shadow behind your compassion, you won't be an empath. You'll be a mirror that only reflects the wounds of others, never your own. There is a reason your empathy feels bigger than your body. Why your moods swing without warning. Why you sometimes cry and have no idea why. Why after speaking to someone in pain, you feel hollowed out, as if a part of you got left behind inside them. What you're feeling isn't just emotional, it's archetypal. You are not merely attuned to people. You are open to the unconscious forces that animate them. Carl Jung called these forces archetypes, primal, timeless patterns of human experience. The mother, the victim, the hero, the wounded child. They live in all of us, beneath personality, beyond culture. And when people suppress them, those archetypes don't die. They leak. And guess who absorbs the leakage? Robert Greene in The Laws of Human Nature warns, when people are not aware of their dark side, it will project outward, onto others, into relationships, and into the collective. Most people don't know they're carrying rage, don't realize they're haunted by shame, don't notice that the wounded child inside them is running their adult lives. But the empath feels it all. You're not just responding to someone's mood, you're responding to their entire psychic field, their ancestors, their suppressed rage, their unlived potential, their repressed shadow. And if you don't recognize that what's entering you is not you, you will become a puppet of unseen forces. You will cry other people's tears, dream other people's nightmares, bleed from wounds you never received. This is what Jung meant when he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And empaths, when unconscious, become the battlegrounds of others' inner wars. You must understand, you're not just sensitive. You are psychically porous, a receiver of archetypal transmissions. And unless you strengthen your center, you won't be helping others. You'll be acting out their unconscious patterns without even knowing it. So when you feel overwhelmed, drained, or off around certain people, pause, breathe, and ask not just, what am I feeling? But, whose archetype just entered the room, because the most dangerous form of possession is not the dramatic kind with rituals and flames. It's the subtle kind, where you slowly lose your own story while carrying someone else's myth. Here is a truth the modern world forgets. What you cannot name will rule you, and what you feel but cannot see will eventually consume you. For the empath, this is especially dangerous, because you are not just absorbing moods, you are absorbing residue, emotional, ancestral, archetypal, and unless you name the energies entering your field, you become their host. This is the first task of the alchemist, the one who transforms pain into gold. You must learn to name the spirits, not literal ghosts, but psychic presences, lingering emotions that do not originate in you, ancestral burdens, inherit grief, unloved memories passed down like old furniture. Mark Wolin in It Didn't Start With You writes, "We can inherit emotions, behaviors, and trauma responses from events that occurred in the lives of our parents and grandparents, even if we never knew them. So when you find yourself weeping at random, when you feel terror that has no cause, when your empathy turns into chronic sadness, ask yourself, is this mine? Or am I feeling something unspoken in my bloodline?" Because many empaths are not just sensitive, they are carriers. Carriers of generational silence, of unwept sorrow, of ancestral shame passed out unconsciously. And without awareness, they become the family's emotional sponge. They feel what no one else could feel. They break down when everyone else stays strong, because someone had to. But feeling it isn't enough. To transmute it, you must name it. To name what enters your field is to reclaim your psychic boundary, to say, this is the grief of my grandmother, not mine. This rage belongs to my lineage. I will honor it, but I will not carry it blindly. This pain is old. It found me because I'm open, but I do not need to house it anymore. Empathy without discernment is emotional chaos, but empathy with discernment is alchemy. It is the moment when the sponge becomes the vessel, not absorbing blindly, but receiving with wisdom. This is your task now, to walk back into your body, into your mind, into your lineage, and ask, what is mine to hold? What is mine to witness? And what must finally be laid to rest? Because until you name the spirits, they will continue to speak through your tears. But you will never know what they were trying to say. There's a razor-thin line between compassion and empaths often believe they are showing love, but what they're actually doing is overfunctioning for people who have stopped functioning for themselves. They mistake emotional enmeshment for empathy. They confuse saving someone with supporting them. They say yes when they mean I'm exhausted. They say I'll be there when what they need is to finally go home to themselves. Melody Beattie, in Codependent No More, said it plainly. Caretaking is an unhealthy form of helping. It's not about love. It's about control. Let that settle in. Some empaths are not just helpers. They are fixers, rescuers, emotional janitors. They clean up pain that was never theirs, hoping that their effort will buy them peace, or approval, or finally, safety. But love that requires you to disappear isn't love. It's servitude. And the worst part, the empath often believes that this is their calling, that their worth is found in how much pain they can carry for others, that being there for everyone is noble, even if it's destroying them. Stephen Covey teaches in The 7 Habits that personal responsibility is the foundation of maturity. Habit 1. Be proactive. Don't just react to others' emotions. Choose your response. You are not a sponge. You are not a victim. You are a person with agency. And habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. That applies inwardly, too. Empaths must seek first to understand their own motives before offering their energy to others. Am I helping because I genuinely want to? Or because I'm afraid of being abandoned if I don't? Am I giving from fullness or from guilt? Do I feel empowered or secretly resentful? Because if your empathy is laced with silent resentment, it's no longer love. It's emotional negotiation. It's if I fix your pain, will you need me enough to keep me? That is not sacred. That is survival. And survival mode empathy leads to burnout, boundary collapse, and a growing resentment toward those you claim to care for. So what's the alternative? Boundaried compassion, where love doesn't mean losing yourself, where presence doesn't mean possession, where you can say, I care deeply, and that's why I will not enable your avoidance. I want to help, but not at the cost of my soul. I will sit beside your pain, but I won't carry it for you. This is not cruelty, this is the beginning of self-respect. Empaths hear this. You are not responsible for the healing of every person who walks into your life. You are responsible for one thing, and one thing only, your own alignment. If your compassion costs you your sanity, it is no longer compassion. It is codependence wearing a spiritual mask, and the mask must come off. You shower your body, you brush your teeth, you change your clothes when they get dirty. But how often do you cleanse your energy field? Most empaths never learned what I call energetic hygiene. They walk through life with open emotional pores, absorbing the psychic dust of everyone they meet. Every glance, every conversation, every sigh leaves an imprint, and the more open you are, the more vulnerable you become to what Dr. Joe Dispenza calls the programming of your subconscious body. In Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, he explains, your body is your unconscious mind. It memorizes emotional states and lives them on repeat, long after the cause is gone. So when an empath walks into a room and feels a sadness they can't name, it's not imagination, it's resonance. Your system is tuned like a radio to other people's frequencies. But here's the problem. If you never tune back into yourself, you become a walk-in reflection of everyone else. Michael Singer, in The Untethered Soul, describes it like this. You are the observer, not the thoughts, not the emotions. Let them pass through you like a breeze. But most empaths don't let things pass through. They trap energy, they hold it, and they relive it, recycle it, replay it, until it becomes their personality. That's not empathy. That's energetic entanglement. You must learn this vital distinction. Just because you feel it doesn't mean it belongs to you. Discernment is your filter. And without a filter, your nervous system becomes a sponge that never dries. So how do you begin the practice of energetic hygiene? Start here, notice before you absorb. Learn to pause before merging. Ask, is this mine? Name what you feel. Undefined emotion as power. Name emotion as boundaries. Breathe through it. Conscious breath interrupts emotional loops stored in the body. Your body is not just a vessel. It's your anchor. Ground yourself. Release intentionally. Cry, write, walk, pray. Move the energy out. Don't let it rot in your field. And most importantly, stop confusing empathy with self. Your ability to feel deeply is sacred, but sacred things require containment. A chalice holds the wine, a temple holds the silence. And you must learn to hold your own energy without letting the ghosts of others live rent-free in your nervous system. Energetic discernment is not disconnection, it's maturity. It's the moment you stop being a psychic sponge and become a conscious vessel. Because the world doesn't need more people absorbing pain, it needs more people transmuting it, without losing themselves in the process. There is a dream that returns to many empaths, a dream where they walk through a vast cathedral made of mirrors. Each mirror reflects not their face, but someone else's suffering. A weeping child, a screaming soldier, a grieving parent, a lover begging not to be left. And somewhere in the silence, the empath asks, which one is me? But the mirrors do not answer, they only reflect. This is not just a dream. This is what it feels like to lose yourself in the emotions of others, to become so attuned to their needs, their moods, their wounds, that you forget your own face. You forget that you are not a mirror. You are a self, a center, a soul. But when you build your identity around being the one who feels, you lose the ability to know what you feel. Your reflection fractures, not from trauma alone, but from the habit of defining yourself by your relationships. Carol Dweck, in Mindset, writes, when you're defining yourself by proving something to others, you are living a fixed identity. But growth requires stepping beyond that identity, even if it breaks everything you thought was true. Many empaths adopt a fixed identity early on. I'm the emotional one. I'm the helper. I'm the one who holds the family together. But identity rooted in service to others can become a prison. It turns your sense of worth into a performance. You begin to act out the role of the healer, even when your soul is asking for space, or silence, or stillness. This is not love. This is spiritual self-abandonment. You become a mirror for everyone else's inner world, but you no longer know how to see your own. And that loss of voice, of boundary, of core identity is not noble. It is dangerous, because a person without a center is easily pulled by guilt, by manipulation, by loneliness disguised as duty. To stop this cycle, you must reclaim the original question. Who am I, outside of what I feel for others? Strip away your roles. Remove your empathic reflex. Close the mirrors one by one, until what remains is you. You will know you've found it when the silence doesn't scare you anymore. This is the beginning of individuation, as Jung called it. The sacred task of becoming who you truly are, not just a reflection of what others need you to be. So the next time you feel yourself disappearing into someone else's sorrow, pause, turn inward, and ask not just, how can I help? But more powerfully, what part of me is afraid to just be, without anyone to rescue? Because you are not the cathedral, you are not the mirrors, you are the one walking through them, and it's time you remembered your name. Here is a truth most empaths dare not say aloud. Sometimes, helping others is not about compassion. It's about survival. Because for many empaths, rescue is a reflex. They don't just want to help, they need to. They feel anxious when they're not needed, guilty when they say no, empty when there's no one to save. This is not just selflessness, it's a hidden hunger. Brown writes in The Gifts of Imperfection, when we give from a place of emptiness, we are not giving, we are seeking. Many empaths learned early on that their feelings didn't matter, but their usefulness that was rewarded. Be the good child, the peacemaker, the sensitive one who notices when others are in pain. And so, like a tree bending toward light, they learned to earn love through emotional labor. Pete Walker, in complex PTSD, calls this the fawn response, a trauma pattern where we appease and overcare as a strategy to stay safe. But here's the danger. What begins as survival becomes identity. You become the one who always knows how others feel, the one who shows up no matter what, the one who absorbs suffering like a sacrament, and quietly, without noticing, you become addicted, not to service, but to significance. Because let's be honest, when you're the only one who understands someone's pain, it makes you feel irreplaceable, it makes you feel seen. Alice Miller wrote in The Drama of the Gifted Child, "Many sensitive children learn to read others so well, they never learned how to recognize themselves." And that's the wound. The empath becomes essential to everyone, except to themselves. So they keep rescuing, keep pouring, keep healing, because the moment they stop, they're left alone with a question they don't know how to answer. Who am I when no one needs me? And the shadow side of empathy whispers, you are only valuable if you are useful. That lie keeps them tethered to draining relationships. It pulls them into romantic bonds with the broken. It convinces them that saying no is selfish, and saying yes, even when empty, is noble. But that is not nobility. It is abandonment disguised as love. So how do you break the addiction to rescue? You start by asking yourself questions that shake your roots. What am I afraid will happen if I stop helping? When I feel needed, do I feel loved? Is my presence a gift or a strategy? If I stopped absorbing pain, would I still be worthy? You see, healing isn't just about boundaries, it's about honesty. And the honest truth is, many empaths help others not to connect, but to cope. But coping is not living. And carrying others is not the same as loving them. You are not here to save everyone. You are here to save the part of you that believed that was your job. That's the real rescue. When you hear the word boundaries, what comes to mind? Walls, distance, coldness. For many empaths, boundaries feel unnatural, even unkind. They believe that to love is to be open all the time, to everyone. But openness without structure is not compassion, it's collapse. Nidra Glover Tawab, in Set Boundaries, Find Peace, writes, a lack of boundaries invites a lack of respect from others and from yourself. Boundaries are not rejections. They are definitions. They are the lines that say, this is me, that is you, this is what I can hold, that is beyond my capacity. This is sacred, that does not get access. And yet, for the empath, saying no can feel like a betrayal, not of others, but of identity. Because if you've built your worth around being endlessly available, drawing a line feels like failure. But here's the paradox. True love requires limits. Michael Singer reminds us that your inner space, your peace, your clarity, is a temple. And just as no one should be allowed to graffiti the walls of a sacred place, no one should be allowed to leave their chaos in your nervous system without your permission. Boundaries are the architecture of presence. They are how you hold your energy. They are how you protect your purpose. Brown said it beautifully. Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. You will disappoint people. That's a guarantee. But the real tragedy is when you disappoint yourself over and over again in the name of being liked. The empath's task is not to become callous. It's to become clear. To say, I feel you, but I will not absorb you. I care, but I cannot fix this for you. I'm available, but I'm not responsible for your emotions. I love you, but not at the cost of abandoning myself. Boundaries do not sever love. They preserve it. They ensure that your giving is real, not performative. That your empathy is rooted, not leaky. That your presence is a gift, not a reaction to guilt. Think of a chalice. It holds the wine because it has a shape. Without that structure, it would spill, break, and lose everything it was meant to hold. You are the chalice. Your boundaries are not barriers. They are your sacred shape. There comes a moment in every empath's journey when the noise of the world can no longer be drowned out by helping others, when the rescuing loses its meaning, when even love begins to feel like entrapment. This is the moment of descent. Jung called it the beginning of individuation, the sacred unraveling of false identities and roles, so the true self can finally emerge. For the empath, this descent feels like betrayal of their purpose, of their usefulness, of everything they've been praised for. But it is not betrayal. It is liberation, because you cannot know your true power until you've met your shadow. The part of you that uses empathy to avoid your own pain. You must go down, not into other people's trauma, but into your own. You must ask, who taught me that love means self-sacrifice? Where did I learn to be silent to stay safe? What part of me believes I must disappear to be loved? Dr. Bessel van der Kolk explains in The Body Keeps the Score that trauma is not just an event. It is an imprint on the body, the brain, and the nervous system. And many empaths carry this imprint, not as memory, but as habit. They feel others not because they're spiritual masters, but because they were trained by pain to notice danger before it arrived. They learn to read faces to avoid conflict, to comfort others to avoid abandonment, to please, to survive. And what the world now calls a gift was once a shield, built in a childhood where being attuned meant being safe. Dr. Joe Dispenza adds, you cannot create a new future while clinging to the emotions of your past, so the empath must stop clinging to pain, to praise, to the identity of the one who feels. They must begin the descent into grief, into rage, into forgotten joy, into the self that has never been allowed to take up space. This is not a quick step. It is a spiral, a holy undoing, because you are not just a sponge. You are not just a helper. You are a soul that has been buried under other people's needs. And now, finally, it's time to rise. Individuation is not becoming someone new. It is remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And that remembering begins when you stop merging and start listening to the voice beneath your empathy, to the body that says, enough, to the soul that whispers, come home. When the empath has descended into the underworld of their own psyche, when they have named their patterns, confronted their shadows, and reclaimed their boundaries, something begins to shift. The urge to fix dissolves. The compulsion to rescue fades, and in its place, a new energy emerges. Quiet, steady, anchored. This is initiated presence. Not the sponge, not the savior, not the emotional first responder, but the mirror. Stephen Covey's fifth habit reminds us, seek first to understand, then to be understood. But true understanding doesn't always require words, it requires presence. Deep, attuned presence. The kind that sees without absorbing, the kind that listens without losing itself. This is the power of the awakened empath. To witness pain without becoming it. To sit beside someone's anguish without offering a solution. To be there, fully, calmly. Not as a rescuer, but as a reflective force. Eckhart Tolle, in The Power of Now, puts it simply, real love doesn't make you suffer. It doesn't cause pain. What causes pain is not love, but the mind's attachment to the illusion of love. Many empaths confuse suffering with love. They've spent so long absorbing the wounds of others that they believe to love you is to carry your cross. But this is not love. It is fusion. It is martyrdom disguised as service. True love, real presence, sees the other clearly and lets them walk their path, even if it's messy, even if it hurts to watch. The initiated empath learns to say, I see your pain, but I trust your path. I offer presence, not rescue. I feel with you, but I do not bleed for you. This is not coldness. This is spiritual warmth with a spine. The mirror does not fix the face it reflects. It simply shows it clearly. And in that clarity, people often begin to heal. Not because the empath did anything, but because their calm presence gave others permission to finally see themselves. That is the empath's greatest power. Not to absorb, not to carry, but to stand rooted. A still point in the storm. A space where truth can rise. You don't have to save anyone. You just have to stop losing yourself in the name of love. You're not here to pull others out of the dark. You're here to light your lamp and let them remember they had one too. By now the empath has descended, confronted, integrated, and risen. They're no longer drowning in others' emotions. They are no longer haunted by the belief that love must equal loss. They are no longer rescuing to feel worthy. They have become anchored to presence, a mirror, a vessel of clarity. But now comes a final test. And it is subtle. It is temptation, not of weakness, but of power. The empath who once felt invisible now walks with presence. The one who once absorbed now reflects. They can sense truth beneath words, feel the undercurrents of a conversation, and sometimes, yes, even guide someone into healing without saying a word. But if they are not careful, they begin to believe they are special, worse, superior. They slip into the archetype of the magician, the one who holds secret knowledge, who sees through illusion, who becomes more than healer, and begins to become untouchable. Robert Greene, in The 48 Laws of Power, warns, when you become too confident in your influence, you become blind to your own vulnerabilities, and it is there that your downfall begins. Spiritual power, when untempered by humility, mutates into manipulation. The empath and a magician may not dominate with force, but with insight. They can read others' wounds, and, if tempted, use those wounds to control. They can appear compassionate, while subtly keeping others dependent on their emotional wisdom. And so, the one who once sought to serve becomes the one who now expects recognition, reverence. Jung warned that spiritual inflation is the most dangerous stage of awakening, because now the ego no longer clings to shame, it clings to light. And light, when not grounded, becomes blinding. Michael Singer reminds us, you are not the voice in your head. You are the one who notices that voice. The final task of the empath is to notice the voice of the magician's ego, the one that says, I'm more evolved, the one that thinks, without me, they'd be lost. The one that believes, I know better, I see more. That voice wears robes of wisdom, but it still seeks control. The initiated empath must now practice daily humility, a sacred self-check. Am I guiding or subtly dominating? Am I witnessing or subtly performing? Am I offering clarity or feeding my identity? You see, awakening is not a badge, it's a vigilance. And the more power you gain, energetic, emotional, intuitive, the more dangerous it becomes if left unchecked. Because the empath's truest mastery is not in reading others, but in continuously reading themselves. So, remain the mirror. Remain the vessel. Remain the one who knows how little they know. And if power comes, let it be worn lightly, like a robe that could fall off at any moment. Not armor, not crown, just presence, just truth, just the quiet, sacred knowing that real power is not dominance. It is discipline. Awakening is not a final destination, it is not a ceremony. It is not a role you wear once you've done the work. It is a discipline, a daily vigilance. Because even after all the healing, the empath's gift remains the same. They feel, and with feeling comes temptation. The old reflexes to merge, to rescue, to disappear inside someone else's pain. Not because you're weak, but because you are wired for connection. But now, you must stay awake. You must walk the line between feeling and fusion, between presence and performance, between compassion and collapse. James Clear, in Atomic Habits, reminds us, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So what system keeps an empath conscious? It is not grand, it is not loud, it is a set of simple, sacred practices, done daily. The morning question, is this mine? The midday pause, am I holding someone else's energy? The evening reflection, did I honor myself while loving others today? These questions are not signs of doubt, they are signs of mastery. Eckhart Tolle says, awareness is the greatest agent of change. So you must practice awareness. Not once, but again and again. Every room you enter, every relationship you nurture, every emotion that arises you ask, am I feeling or fusing? Am I helping or controlling? Am I present or performing empathy to feel needed? And when the answer startles you, that means you're awake. Because to be an empath is not to be soft, it is to be brave. Brave enough to feel deeply without losing yourself. Brave enough to say no when it would be easier to say yes. Brave enough to carry your gift, not as a burden, but as a responsibility. You are not here to absorb pain. You are here to transmute it, with discernment, with strength, with grace. So if one day you wake up tired, porous, overwhelmed, return to your center, return to your breath, return to your truth. You do not need to earn your place in the world by bleeding for it. You need only to inhabit yourself fully, because that, a soul anchored in its own energy, is the most healing presence of all. You are not the sponge. You are not the sacrifice. You are not the pain collector of the world. You are the threshold, the chalice, the fire that knows how to warm without burning. And in your presence, the world does not get rescued, it gets remembered.